never say I can't. That is what I learned in this country. Even if they don't know it, they said, oh, I can't. Yeah, if you don't know it, you don't know it. But naturally, our people are not like that, the Africans.
I think sometimes people convince themselves out of not doing something because they're just like, I have a heavy accent. People aren't going to accept me. People are going to look at me different. And to say, you know what, you can't control what people are going to think, but maybe you could try to do what you're best to change that narrative.
So I ran for city council, and I didn't win the first time, and I didn't win the second time. But then I won the third time, and I won 5 consecutive terms since then.
I'm a retired lawyer.
Teaching is my passion. Working with youth and children is my passion.
I work for the Cross Cultural Learners Center as a settlement worker and a life skills coordinator.
When I was doing my master's degree, an opportunity came up to come to Canada to do a doctorate.
So I'm a city councillor. I'm also the chair of the police services board.
When I came to this country, first of all, I wanted a job. I came here to settle down to work. I didn't come to go to school or anything. I just didn't have a clue what I wanted to do.
I mean, I'm so fortunate to say that I don't have language barrier as much as I can. I have been working 30 years in the university.
Most immigrants are facing they have challenges in finding jobs.
I was looking for a job according to my education or to my experience, but here in Canada it is not as you want it. So
I went to the London Cross Cultural Center for advice in settlement. What do I do? What are the provisions? What is the next step that I have to do in getting my permanent residence card? So it happened that I found a job immediately as an interpreter.
Find a job and then upgrade yourself from where you are. And it doesn't matter what you have. If you've got a PhD, if you're a doctor, an engineer, an architect, you still have to upgrade that to Canadian standard. So that will always be a challenge.
Taking risk, not being afraid, and kind of just saying to yourself, you're going to make mistakes, you may fail on the process, but that's part of learning, and that's part of it.
If you come with a family, then the challenge will be to get that family to begin to assimilate into the conditions. If they're not English speaking, they gotta learn English or French. Then they gotta go to school, and then they gotta settle down in a neighborhood.
I think that's been a challenge. In between the times when you're from one state to another, you have to wait, and that's usually beyond your control. So I'm thinking that's the number one major challenge, and it's not anyone's making. It's a challenge of a country trying to have a system that is organized and predictable, but the people experiencing it, usually you wish it was much faster.
One of the things that can be very challenging for prospective immigrants is the very thing that brought me to Canada, which is learning to live in a political system which is very different from the one to which you're accustomed. And for some immigrants, that's a big transition because they're used to fighting or fearing the government. And here, we participate in our democratic processes, but mostly without fear.
In 2016, Prime Minister launched for the Syrian refugees to come to Canada.
This is a big adjustment for some people who really don't want to have anything to do with officers of the law because their experience was totally negative. And that's a big mountain for many immigrants to climb. But if they can develop more trust in the professionalism of our public servants, I think it can save them a lot of anxiety. My country of origin was Jamaica, which is in the British, or in the Commonwealth. It was the British Commonwealth to begin with. And Canada was a member of the Commonwealth. So we had values and history and political systems in common. And so Canada made a lot of sense to me.
You cannot accomplish anything or everything by yourself.
The community has to be very responsible for her people, to give advices, to help these people. We are nobody to them in relationship, but they are really helpful. They showed us how the administration is. In Africa, the only thing we are weak is in the administration. Otherwise, we have everything. So we have to learn from these people.
It takes time, and when you move, either for work or for education, sometimes your networks, you have to build new networks.
I've met people who are well established, lots of money, lots of education, but they don't have the confidence until they find some person or some organization who could lead them and help them assimilate.
You work with people in the same profession. You can easily see people and identify with them. People of the same age, you can easily see them and identify them. People of the same backgrounds, you could easily identify with, has a black background, for instance, or an African background. But what's not visible is people that are of a like mind. And that's been a challenge for me. And I should say it's taken me time.
I started volunteering in the library. And that volunteerism in due course piled up, and after a long time of volunteering, then I was hired as a permanent employee.
I've always been a person who likes to serve voluntarily. I belong to several organizations.
The biggest asset that one could give, or he or she needs to give into the Canadian society, is volunteerism. It is a step towards your goal. And not only that, but you are helping people in your ability. What are your tributes? What are your attributes?
There's a lot of things that fell into place for me, and I think that happens for everyone. You just have to open up your eyes and say, in what ways have I been lucky, and can I build on that?
So my journey to Canada was coming from Sudan.
My journey to Canada was via Belize to Jamaica to Canada.
My journey to Canada is not actually that I want to, but I was forced to.
My name is Mengesha Bayene. I am from Ethiopia.
I drove my new car from the US to Canada. I crossed the border at Fort Erie.
First of all, I was working in Jamaica, and while I was working there, a gentleman who was a Canadian used to work in the same building with me.
For me, the first thing that I remember is just meeting new Canadians and just their very gracious welcome and the smiling faces that welcomed us.
And every morning he would come in there, take his coffee break, and come and stand by my drawing board. And he'd say, Harold, I think you should go to Canada. Harold, I think you should go to Canada.
I have my second daughter is living in Toronto. She has been inviting me 15 years ago to come to Canada, even to visit, let alone to live.
Living without any status in the United States was really difficult.
I was in prison and I was struggling. Finally, I decided just to leave. So that's why I came to Canada.
I came as an immigrant, a refugee, and a claimant for asylum here in Canada. That day was, I think, a blessing.
So my journey has been lengthy in terms of the geography, moving all the way from Africa.
Memorable will be the interview at the border. It was tense, and we didn't know whether we would be allowed to enter or return to the US. That would have been another debacle.
The long highway journey from Cleveland, Ohio to Kingston, Ontario. It was a long way, and I'd never driven that far alone.
We have been praying for Canada. I grew up in a mission church, and my family are Christians, and we used to pray for Canada, really, in the school, because Canada is the only nation which she doesn't like to fight. but she interferes to make peace among people, among nations. That's how they taught us. And for that matter, really, the love of Canada, I have it in with the things they are doing, but not for coming and living. But finally, when I come here, the things I have been praying for years, when I come to see it, it was not the same.
I knew nothing about Canada except that I knew the Royal Bank of Canada. And I heard that Canada was cold, and that's it.
So when I came to Edmonton, and anyone who has been to Edmonton would really appreciate that it's very different from a tropical country that I came from. So that was memorable for me, and I did come in January, and that was white, crispy white snow, and the skies were blue.
I wasn't used to winter, and I couldn't quite get up this little grade. So I stopped the car, parked it, walked home, and got my landlord, who came, and I told him, I said, I have this problem, I can't. So he came and he showed me how to do it. Just be brave, put your foot on the gas and get up the hill.
The snow doesn't come alone. You have to scrape, you have to wear boots, gloves, so many things that accompany which you're not used to.
I like the 4 seasons. And I say that because whenever I go back home, I get tired of that constant heat. I can't take the heat for too long, especially heat with humidity, if it's too hot.
If you're not driving, the wait time at the bus station, depending on the windshield and the snow, you freeze.
Psychological adjustment to winter. It's cold, it can be quite uncomfortable, and it's an ingrained Canadian characteristic to complain about it. But I felt that if I complained about it, it would make me miserable. I don't like being miserable, so I decided not to complain about it. And in order not to complain about it, I had not to be in a state of mind where I didn't care. It was winter, it was winter, it was winter. Too bad. It will end.
As I wanted to make an impact in my community, but also when I saw people who are sitting at the decision-making table, a lot of them weren't necessarily speaking about the issues that were important to me as well, and I wanted to bring a different lens. And then what I mean by that lens is a diverse lens.
One of the big challenges here is we are still fighting bigotry, racism, and prejudice in our society.
I think when you come to Canada, anyone will experience sometimes some of the barriers that are in place. I've experienced racism, I've experienced Islamophobia.
And more, our city is becoming more and more diverse, and I like that. When I first came here, there were not very many. There were ethnic people and people of color, visible minorities, etc. were a very small part of the population, and they used to be ignored.
Growing up at home was a little bit different than going out to my friends' homes and just some of those things that they do. As we all know, when you're fasting during Ramadan, everyone's eating at school, and you're sitting there and you're hungry and everyone's eating, and it could be sometimes a little bit interesting.
For people of color, there's that challenge of, the more difficult challenge of feeling as part of the community without feeling that you are inferior to others.
When you move from the place where you are, it's always a challenge. I mean, because it's not your place, you don't know much about it, and maybe people consider you that, special for the people who came from outside, like second citizen, or like people which we didn't do anything or understanding. Mostly that's what I face.
Some of the younger people who grew here might find it a little easier because they grew up with the students in their classroom, but sooner or later they find out after they finish high school and university that people begin to treat them differently.
Especially for older children, to have the self-confidence to know that if the teacher doesn't understand the level of competence of the student, and tends to undervalue it, having the confidence to say, I know what I know. If you give me a chance, I will show you that I do know it.
And that anyone, irrespective of their culture, of their socioeconomic status at home, or their political affiliation or education, for wherever they're coming from, when you come to Canada, there's hope, there's a new life.
Just the opportunities that are available here in Canada versus in other places in the world where there's what I'm doing, won't necessarily be as easy, and maybe those doors won't be there. But just I realize that if I'm able to work and be willing to face maybe some of those barriers that do exist, and there's many challenges, that there is those opportunities that I can take.
I would be afraid to go and retire anywhere else.
Having a young family, like the availability of several smaller cities, one of them being London, where you can raise a family in a smaller city, where you can almost get everything or have access to several of the stuffs you need.
We are very lucky in that we have a very good educational system and a very good health system, and we don't boast about that enough, I think.
The earlier part of the public education system, it's really important for parents to find the time and the energy to engage, to help their children succeed in the school system, especially by interacting with teachers. Many parents who come in to our school system, our education system, don't realize that they can't just leave it to the teachers.
There's a lot of barriers and a lot of challenges and some difficult days, and sometimes it's hard to get up and say, I'm going to keep doing this, when you have people who are saying negative things. You have a lot of things that you can't control, and you have to fight that, and you have to work through that, and it takes a lot of energy. But if you're passionate and really want to do something, you're going to find yourself being able to overcome it. You're going to find yourself being able to face it head on.
But accept help, accept mentorship, and believe in yourself as much as possible.
I think every immigrant is resilient.
Not only is it that it's a benefit for us to be in this country, but it's a benefit for people who are already in this country to have people like us come here.
I have to stand up and to live according to what I believe. And I know that I didn't feel like I don't have any inferiority because I came to Canada, I am black, they are white. That doesn't work with me. So the challenge is not much for me, but my people are really in problem by saying, oh, because we are this, I say, don't say that. Be yourself, stand still.
We create that economic drive. We bring new culture, we bring new ideas and different things. You think about all the immigrants who've come here and contributed to this country, created new businesses, new jobs, inventions, and those pieces. I think that's important to recognize.
Every immigrant in Canada, you have to be resilient. You have to have some grit, so that you can be able to get up and keep running or keep walking.